My name is Cassia Wynne, 28 years old. The roast on my mother's table had gone dry at the edges, as if time itself had been carving thin curls from it all afternoon. The chandelier hummed softly, steady as a ceiling heartbeat. Brent sat across from me, scrolling, his face lit blue-white by the screen. More attention for the pixels than for any person breathing in the room. Joyce, never mom when she was in hostess mode, tapped the side of her wine glass with her wedding ring in a rhythm that made my shoulders want to rise like a cat's fur. Jeffrey rustled his newspaper without reading it, eyes on the print, loyalty on autopilot. Okay, Brent said, not lifting his gaze. We're upgrading the menu. Lobster tails, not chicken, and champagne, vintage, not the cheap stuff. Lindsay wants orchids on every table, the Indonesian ones. I counted 1 breath in, 2 out. I had promised myself, don't say the first no. Say the second, clean and steady. That's not in the budget, I said. I've already paid deposits on the current plan. Brent finally looked up. He had our father's jawline and our mother's patience, which was to say none. You're always cutting corners, Cass, he said, like he'd just discovered an amusing flaw in the house wiring. It's my wedding. Make it happen. Lindsay, perched beside him in a pale sweater, squeezed her water glass so gently the lemon slice rose and fell. The photographer we like is amazing, she said to the room, more than to me. He shot the governor's gala. Brent said he'd, She let the sentence thin out and disappear, her eyes flickering toward him. The implication hung there. He'd already reached out. He hadn't paid a deposit. Joyce set her glass down a fraction too hard, stemware chiming. This is once in a lifetime, she said. Why are we even discussing it, Jeffrey? The paper rustled in answer. He didn't look up. Don't be difficult, Cassia, he muttered. You know how your brother is. I smiled the way you do when a stranger steps on your foot in a crowded elevator. Quick, no teeth, no trouble. I've covered half of this wedding, I said. $10,000 of my savings. The menu's chosen. The band's booked. I negotiated the flowers down to something that still looks like a garden. If you want luxury on top of that, someone else has to pay for it. Brent leaned back. The light from his phone slid off his cheek. You keep score like you're a martyr, he said. We asked you to plan, not to be cheap. Get a string quartet from Pittsburgh. Replace the band. Which one? I asked. The one I hired after you told me to, or the one you called behind my back when you decided that local means tacky? His smirk faltered, just a hairline crack, and then he covered it by glancing at Lindsay. Joyce didn't miss a beat. You always do this, she said. The bare minimum, dressed up as sacrifice. If you actually cared about your brother. I do care, I said, and heard the too quickness in it, the injury. I put my hands flat to the table so I wouldn't reach for my purse out of habit, my purse that held a thin envelope of receipts. Caterer, florist, venue contract with the clause I insisted on initialing, the backup generator note in my handwriting. Because no one ever thinks about power until it fails. I'd printed everything and tucked it in that envelope because Nathan had left a voicemail an hour before dinner, his voice low and solid. Record everything tonight, even if it's just on paper. Love you like a sister, but I'm telling you, protect yourself. Joyce's eyes cut to my hands. This is not about your feelings, Shirley, she said. It's about family. Your brother has standards. Lindsay's lemon slice bobbed. She kept her eyes down. Brent reached for his phone and slid it toward me, a photographer's website glittering on the screen. Glassy spreads of people who looked like they'd been born wearing cufflinks. He's available if we wire tonight, Brent said. You handle the other transfers. Handle this one. No. I let the words sit. I didn't decorate it. I won't pay for it, and I won't move the contracts I've signed. If you want the orchids, wire the florist. If you want vintage champagne, you can call the caterer and put it on your card. I'll forward the contact. The silence that followed had weight. It put its hand on my shoulder and pressed. Jeffrey folded his paper with care, then laid it beside his plate like a napkin. You're making a scene, he said, without looking at me. I'm answering the question I was asked. Joyce's smile went thin. She picked up her glass again but didn't drink, just held the stem in 2 fingers like a judge holds a pen. Then here's my answer, she said. With that cool, careful voice she saves for waiters and women she doesn't like in boutiques. The greatest gift you can give your brother on his wedding day is to vanish from this family. It landed the way a door lands when it slams, and something small on a shelf falls forward but doesn't break. I didn't breathe for one, and then I breathed too much. My vision tunneled, and then it steadied. Lindsay's chair scraped a millimeter back. Brent sat straighter, triumphant and embarrassed by it at once. "Joyce," Jeffrey said finally, and there was a current in it. Rebuke, maybe, but it sputtered. He looked at his hands as if someone else had left them there. I reached for my purse. The envelope of receipts made a soft, papery sound against the leather. I shoved it deeper, as if some part of me thought they might try to take that too. "If that's what you want," I said. I kept my voice ordinary. "Okay." "Don't dramatize," Joyce said, relief already loosening her mouth. "We just want a smooth day tomorrow." "I've been trying to give you a smooth day for months," I said. "You're telling me you don't want me here." Brent exhaled through his nose, almost a laugh, almost a sigh. Finally, something we agree on. Lindsay looked up then, guilt flaring like a match. "Cassia, we appreciate everything you've—" "Lindsay," Brent warned, and she swallowed the rest. I slid my chair back. The legs made a sound like record scratch. I wanted to say the list. I wanted to recite it. The savings that became deposits, the vendor calls at midnight, the emails written from my car during lunch breaks, the way I'd stood in a parking lot in the rain, arguing the generator clause into existence because I could see it. The power failing in this old venue and everyone blaming me for candles. I wanted to pepper the air with proof until it sparkled with truth. But Nathan's voice in my ear again. "Record everything. Don't perform. Keep your feet." "All right," I said. "I'll get out of your way." Joyce's face did something like relief, and then she hardened it into magnanimity. "Thank you," she said. "Don't make it ugly." "I won't," I said, and felt the old habit rise, the one where I soften my edges so theirs don't cut me. I let it rise and pass. "Good night." I moved through the hallway I grew up running down in socks, past the photographs that had somehow learned to tilt toward Brent, no matter how many times I straightened them, past the umbrella stand that has never held an umbrella. It holds wrapping paper now, festive and useless. At the front door I hesitated, not because I wanted to stay, but because the house smelled like furniture polish and old arguments, and I wanted to remember, just once, that I had been a kid here who believed I could earn it. Love, pride, a seat at the table, if I worked hard enough. The night air came in clean when I opened the door, shocking and good. My breath fogged, as if even that wanted to see itself. From the dining room, Brent's voice rose and blurred into laughter at something on his phone. Joyce began collecting plates as if removing evidence. Jeffrey said nothing. I stepped onto the porch, my keys loud in my hand. I didn't cry. The envelope of receipts pressed a neat rectangle against my hip. Paper armor. I pulled my phone out because the habit is strong, and there it was. A voicemail from Nathan time-stamped an hour before dinner. I pressed play and held it to my ear, the words I'd already memorized when they were still ink in the air. Record everything tonight. A car passed on the street, bass low and patient, a pulse that reminded me mine was still there. I walked to my car, each step a small decision. At the curb I looked back once, not at the house, but at the dining room window, where the chandelier made a crown of light no one deserved. Lindsay moved past the glass, a pale smear of motion. For a second her hand lifted, as if she might swipe at condensation, as if she might write something, a word, an apology. She didn't. The moment changed its mind. I got in, shut the door, and the world went softer. The engine turned, steady and sure. I sat with my hands on the wheel and let the future arrange itself into a line I could walk. If they wanted me gone, they would get their wish, on my terms. I would not fade. I would not leave my name behind for them to mispronounce. I would take it with me, along with my receipts and my breath and the part of myself that still knew how to start over. The chandelier's glow shrank in the rear view as I pulled away. The voicemail ended in a beep that sounded like a green light. I didn't look back again. I didn't need to. The night was crisp, and the road made a simple promise. Go forward. The morning after, I woke up with the taste of metal in my mouth, the kind that comes from grinding your teeth all night. My phone screen lit up with the balance of my savings account, $10,000. Every cent locked into Brent's wedding. Deposits that I had signed, contracts with my name printed at the bottom in pen. My chest felt like it had shrunk 2 sizes smaller. They wanted me gone? Fine. but they weren't taking my future with them. I made coffee strong enough to burn and started dialing. The caterer answered first. Cassia, hi, everything set for tomorrow? Her voice was cheerful, already picturing lobster tails that would never arrive. No, I said steady. Cancel the order. Refund the deposit. A pause. There'll be a penalty. I'm aware. Refund what you can. Her tone shifted, sympathy slipping through professionalism. You're the one who paid, right? Not the groom? Yes. Then you get the refund. Next was the florist. She remembered me right away. The roses are already here, Cassia, but I'll see what we can salvage. Her voice lowered. Funny thing, though. Your brother called after you confirmed. He asked about orchids, overseas shipments, never wired the money, said you'd cover it. My grip on the phone tightened. I didn't agree to that. I figured, she said softly. You've always been the practical one. By noon, I had clawed back most of my money. The band balked, already cashing my check, but I filed a chargeback with my bank. A subject line blinked across my inbox while I worked, regarding prior authorization on account ending 7821. My stomach churned. I didn't open it. Not yet. By evening, Brent's dream day stood stripped bare. At the venue, guests shuffled in under chandeliers, their voices climbing in confusion. White tables without flowers looked like blank pages. No music swelled. No sense of food drifted. Only silence broken by whispers. Lindsay stood in her gown like someone had dressed her for a play that never started. Brent's face reddened so fast I thought it might crack. Joyce's voicemail came sharp and shrill. What have you done? You've ruined everything. Jeffrey followed with ice in his tone. You're a disgrace to this family. I didn't answer. Instead, I sat in my apartment packing a box. Inside went my laptop, a few books, and the envelope of receipts. I'd saved them, signed in them, tucked them like lifelines. Now they were evidence, my proof against a story they were already spinning. I sold my client list to a local marketing agency for $25,000, a clean break. I also called the bank and withdrew the $5,000 I'd once invested into our family store, the same store I had saved years ago. Without my money, their cracks would widen into chasms. That night, Brent posted on a local forum. His words hissed through the screen. My sister sabotaged my wedding. She's jealous. She ruined the best day of my life. Comments piled up, neighbors calling me selfish, spiteful, unhinged. Joyce chimed in, piling on. Jeffrey stayed silent, which was worse. I wanted to fire back, post the receipts, upload the truth, but I didn't. They'd never believe me. Instead, I booked a one-way bus ticket to Asheville, North Carolina. I'd been there once, mountains sprawling like a promise. That promise tugged at me now. On the ride down, the night window showed me the ghost of my own face. For once, it didn't look like someone begging for approval. It looked like someone leaving. When the bus hissed into Asheville's station, dawn washed the mountains pink. My suitcase wheels rattled across cracked pavement, loud and real. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment downtown. Bare walls, secondhand furniture, but a view of the peaks. That night, I ate takeout on the floor, receipts stacked beside me like old friends. Meanwhile, Erie unraveled. Nathan texted updates. Stores collapsing. Suppliers refusing deliveries. Brent clueless. Joyce's reputation tanking. Jeffrey sulking. Lindsay looks ready to bolt. I didn't reply. Their unraveling was no longer my burden. Asheville smelled of bread and coffee, not rot. On my second morning, I wandered into a bakery, drawn by sugar and cinnamon. Shirley Bennett, the owner, flour on her apron, handed me a scone with a grin. You're new. Here, first one's on me. Her laughter filled the room the way light should. She didn't ask what I'd run from, only what I could do. Within a week, she'd introduced me to 2 shop owners who needed marketing help, my first Asheville clients. For the first time in years, my chest didn't feel small. It felt like it had room. But on my desk, under a mug of cooling tea, lay a slip of certified mail I hadn't opened yet. Erie hadn't finished with me. The certified mail slip stared at me from under my tea mug for 3 days before I picked it up. The bakery down the block had become my safe place. Sugar and warmth and Shirley's laugh. But every time I walked back into my apartment, the envelope on my desk pulled the air out of the room. On the 4th morning, I gave in. The clerk at the post office slid a thick manila envelope across the counter. Sign here, she said. Her pen squeaked against the clipboard as I scrawled my name. Back home, I slid it open with a butter knife. Legal letterhead, cold and heavy. Notice of claim. The words blurred until I blinked them into focus. Brent and Joyce accused me of sabotage and misappropriation of funds. They claimed the $10,000 I'd paid in deposits was family money, that my $5,000 investment in the store had always been a gift. According to them, I had no right to pull it back. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. Family money, I said to my empty apartment. Family only when it costs me. That night, I took the envelope to Shirley. She wiped flour off her hands, read the first page, and shook her head. "This smells like manipulation," she said. "They want to scare you. Don't let them." Her bluntness steadied me. But when I called Nathan, my voice shook. "They're trying to paint me as a thief," I said. "They've been painting you as the villain for years," he replied. "Difference is, this time you've got receipts." And I did. The neat rectangle of paper armor I'd carried out of Erie. Contracts, cancellation confirmations, even the backup generator clause. Proof that every cent had been mine. Shirley introduced me to a local attorney named Clara Marin. Clara's office smelled like old books and lemon oil. She listened without interrupting, her pen scratching notes. When I finished, she set it down. "Truth lives in receipts," she said. "You have them. That's your shield." She asked for everything: copies of the contracts, bank statements, screenshots of Brent's texts demanding upgrades. Nathan emailed me timestamps of Brent's forum posts, showing he'd started blaming me before guests even arrived. Clara smiled at that. "Timeline is everything," she said. We built a file together, piece by piece. Sticky notes, tabs, highlighter marks, like neon veins across the pages. At night I'd lie awake, replaying the dining table scene in my head. Joyce's glass, striking down like a gavel, Brent's smirk, Jeffrey's silence. It felt less like memory and more like evidence now. But evidence doesn't stop the ache. One afternoon, the venue manager from Erie called Clara back. She remembered a separate conversation. Brent, not me, phoning to demand a new band, promising wire transfers that never came. Clara leaned back in her chair, satisfied. That's corroboration. Still, the fear crawled under my skin. I walked the streets of Asheville at night, listening to mountain winds rattle through trees, wondering how much more of me Erie would try to take. Clara gave me the answer one morning. "You're being summoned for mediation." I pressed my palms flat on her desk, willing them not to shake. "I have to go back." "Yes," she said, "but this time you won't go alone. You'll go with your story in writing." The word story echoed. For years, I'd been the shadow in their narrative, the cautionary character in someone else's tale. But now, for the first time, my version had teeth. I walked out of her office into sharp mountain sunlight, clutching the file. My reflection in the glass door looked unfamiliar, back straighter, jaw firmer. Asheville had given me new breath. Erie wanted it back. And soon I would have to face them with every receipt laid bare. The mediation room smelled faintly of stale coffee and disinfectant, the kind of neutral space designed to strip moments of their power. But nothing about this felt neutral. The long table stretched between us like a fault line. On one side, me with Clara and my thick folder of receipts. On the other, Joyce in her fitted blazer, Brent with his jaw clenched, Jeffrey sunk low in his chair, and Lindsay perched at the end as if she wished she were invisible. The mediator, a calm woman with gray hair swept back, began with pleasantries. I barely heard them. My pulse was drumming in my ears. Joyce opened first. "My daughter sabotaged her own brother's wedding. She canceled vendors, stole deposits." "Correction," Clara cut in smoothly. "She canceled vendors she had contracted and paid with her money. Here are the receipts." She slid a neat stack across the table. The mediator scanned the papers. Joyce's lips thinned. Brent leaned forward, eager. "She ruined everything. She wanted to humiliate me." I met his eyes. "You humiliated yourself when you promised orchids and photographers you never paid for?" His flush rose quick. "Lies." "The florist's affidavit said otherwise." Clara laid it down gently. "Vendor testimony confirms Mr. Wynne contacted them independently, promised funds, and never delivered." Lindsay shifted, color creeping up her neck. Finally, her voice came small but steady. "Brent told me he'd already covered it, that Cassia was being difficult." She looked down, twisting her ring. "But he never transferred anything." The silence afterward was thick enough to cut. Joyce's head snapped toward her future daughter-in-law, disbelief flashing before she smoothed it over. Jeffrey just rubbed his temple, staring at the table as if wishing it would swallow him. The mediator cleared her throat. So far, the evidence shows Ms. Wynne canceled her own contracts lawfully. The funds were hers. Joyce recovered fast, her weapon always the pivot. Fine, but the $5,000 she pulled from the store, everyone knows it was a gift. Clara handed over the old ledger copy, the line item altered in different ink. Or an investment reclassified after the fact, she said evenly. We'd like to subpoena the accountant. A flicker of panic crossed Joyce's face. I recognized it. The same look she wore when overdue bills stacked on the kitchen counter years ago, before I'd bailed them out with radio ads and flyers. The mediator raised a hand. Given the conflicting claims, I suggest a settlement discussion. Her eyes softened, practiced neutrality masking sympathy. Sometimes peace is worth more than proof. There it was, the moment. I could fold, walk away, with nothing but my own quiet vindication. Or I could stand. I leaned forward, hands steady on the table. I'll consider a statement of peace, but only if 3 conditions are met. First, you correct the ledger, list my contribution as an investment. Second, you retract the lies online and make it public. Third, you acknowledge in writing that I was the one who saved the store years ago. Joyce's jaw locked. Brent scoffed. You're dreaming. Jeffrey surprised me then, his voice low but audible. She did save it. We all know it. He didn't look at me when he said it, but the words sat heavy in the room. The mediator looked from face to face. These are her terms. You'll need to decide whether you want peace or escalation. The tension crackled like static, waiting to arc. The decision didn't come that afternoon. The mediator adjourned, giving both sides a week to consider terms. I walked out of the building into Erie's gray sky, my folder heavier than my suitcase had ever been. Behind me, voices rose. Joyce's clipped, Brent's sharp, Jeffrey's low rumble trying to quiet them. Lindsay trailed a few steps back, arms folded tight like she was bracing against a storm. Back in Asheville, Shirley had tea waiting at the bakery counter. How bad? She asked. I told her everything. The affidavit, the ledger, my 3 conditions. She didn't flinch. So you gave them a door. Question is, do they walk through it or slam it on themselves? Nathan called that night. His voice buzzed through my speaker, warm and steady. Don't give an inch, Cass. They're used to you folding. Not this time. The week crawled. Every ring of my phone made my stomach clench. On the 6th day, Clara called. They've responded, she said. Partial acceptance. They'll correct the ledger, they'll retract online, but they refuse to acknowledge you saved the store. They say it's revisionist history. I laughed, a short, incredulous sound. Revisionist? I lived in that store. I rebuilt it while Brent was billing hours at his law firm. They're dangling compromise, Clara said gently, but the choice is yours. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the receipts spread out like a hand of cards. Proof in ink and signatures. Proof they'd tried to erase. The mountains outside my window loomed steady, indifferent. The next morning, I walked into Clara's office. No deal, I said. We don't settle halfway. If they can't say the truth, I'd rather walk away. At mediation's final session, Joyce's blazer looked stiffer, her smile sharper. Brent's eyes darted, restless. Jeffrey stared at the tabletop. Lindsay didn't even come. The mediator asked if I'd reconsider. I shook my head. Truth isn't negotiable. Joyce exhaled through her nose, slow as venom. Then you'll always be alone. I stood. No, I'll just be free. Clara gathered our papers. Jeffrey finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. He didn't look at me, but his hands trembled against his coffee cup. I didn't answer. Some words come too late to matter. By evening, I was back in Asheville. Shirley had left a note taped to a bakery box. Blueberry muffins for courage. You already have the rest. I opened my laptop and filed the last of the paperwork with Clara. Then I sealed copies of every receipt, mailed them to myself, postmarked proof for the future. The next morning, sun spilled across the bakery's glass. My phone pinged. The tourism board had renewed my contract for another 6 months. Work, steady, and mine. I sat with my coffee, the city waking around me, and breathed without bracing. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't carrying their weight. I had chosen myself, and I was enough.